Welcome back to the Ultimate Homeschool Community Podcast. I'm your host, Tiffany Hernandez. And today we have a returning guest, which is super exciting. I always love when we have returning guests because we have so much to share. And Todd is with us again from Access Academy. So welcome, Todd.
Thank you. Appreciate being back.
Absolutely. Today we have a lot of things on our schedule to talk about because high school is fast and furious, and there's a lot of parts and pieces, and a lot of parents end up just throwing their kids back into high school for, public school for high school because there's so much to do, there's so much to know, and they don't want to mess up their child's college applications or their transcripts or whatever other paperwork comes with that. And so a lot of times they end up missing out on those really formative years of high school because they're so afraid of the paperwork and or because it's just a lot more work. And that's really what we're here to talk about is not only credits for high school. There's a lot of things with math that has changed, especially for Tennessee, but also, that transitional period of maybe my kid's really getting bullied. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. And then what about a 5-year high school opportunity? Because sometimes we can't fit it in 4 years, and that's okay too. So Todd is here to share all about that. So can you talk with us a little bit first? Because you're very much skilled in all things technology and science and computer science, and that's something that you share with in your academy. You have a class that you teach, but can you share a little bit about the math credits right now? Because I know they're changing or they have changed for Tennessee.
Absolutely. One of the things that happened in the last year's Board of Education process was that they implemented a new requirement for entering ninth graders. So, those that started ninth grade in the 24-25 school year have a new requirement of a computer science credit. And so there's a couple of different ways that you can achieve that. And that is either by simply adding a computer science credit to your repertoire of credits that you're taking, or they have offered the ability for you to exchange one of the higher math credits or science credits that you need, and you can replace it. So you still only would take one computer science credit. For Tennessee homeschoolers, that means the 22 credit requirement still applies, but you can replace one of those math or science credits with that computer science credit. If you choose that you want to keep that 4 maths and 3 sciences, then you simply add the computer science credit. So we have some solutions to help with that as you explore that.
Okay. So what's great about that is that you don't have to add anymore if you don't want to, because you can just replace them. So for some of those students who are maybe like, yeah, I really don't need this higher math, what does the computer science credit entail? What do they need to do for that specific credit?
Sure, there's a few options. I mean, the idea, of course, when you reach the higher level maths, you have a lot of building on what you've learned previously. And of course, in the science realm, the idea is a lab science. So there's a lot of hands-on work involved. In the computer science credits, there's things like robotics, where you're learning to interact, you're programming, um, uh, using those hands-on resources and tools in more of a lab-like environment. And then, of course, there are just the actual computer sciences where you're learning coding and things of that nature. And so we have a couple of different options where we help students fulfill that credit obligation using classes like that.
Okay. So, if parents are like, well, what do I do? Because I don't have robots at home that we can just play with. If they take an online course, does that suffice for the computer science?
So what we offer is actually live instruction interaction in that sense. And so we
Okay.
have instructors that would actually guide, have examples. And so we have in the case of our robotics class, we have robot kits that are ordered and part of that process. And so students would have those in hand, and we would be working together with those during our class online instruction. And then, of course, the home time hands-on activities throughout the week guided by the parents, and of course are able to reach an instructor with questions if they get stuck in that kind of thing. So the computer sciences, if the parents aren't comfortable in that realm, at this point we only have instructor-led courses. We're not really set up to support a
Right.
parent-led option for a computer science credit, but because they're a little more difficult by and large, but we have that support that we can provide the families.
Got you. So if a parent does need, let's say they do need to find something that is online, um, are there options for strictly online available out there? Or how, if
Nope,
someone
that is a
can't do
little
in
bit
person?
new.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a little bit new. And so I'm sure there are things out there. We haven't looked specifically to see kind of what's out there. We've just been developing the program that we have kind of
Hmm.
in-house that we offer. And so I'm sure there are other solutions out there that would suffice for the computer science credit. I don't see a lot of details in the Board of Education what that looks like. But when you look at
Okay.
what's required for a math credit or for a lab science, the idea, the spirit of the credit is the same. And so there's a little bit more effort in that, but it's different for those that just aren't interested in that more complicated science, or as you point out, the harder math, the pre-calc, things of that a lot of students aren't really interested in pursuing. So.
Yeah. I did pre-calc. It was no fun. I barely passed. So I'm with those students that are like, yeah, hey, I don't need this for my degree, my career. Um, and a lot of times it's just pulling teeth for the parents. So who wouldn't want to play with robots and learn how, to connect coding and all of that? And that's really coming out more and more. And so Todd has a great program now that is in the East Tennessee area. So if you're in the East Tennessee area, definitely feel free to reach out to him for that. And moving right along, so we've got students that are transitioning into homeschooling later on in their high school career. And sometimes that can be really challenging, especially if they're behind in credits or what have you, due to bullying or some other, medical issue or something like that, where they might need to or want to move out of the public school later on, and their parents like, okay, this is like the last resort, but this is what we have to do. What
Sure.
would you suggest for those students? I know you have your umbrella program. Typically, you want to see them coming in like at least by ninth grade so you can help them get all of their credits. What would
Sure.
you say is a solution for those students that might have to catch up or might have to come in later to the homeschooling side?
Well, as you point out, it's a case by case basis, and as students are exploring what those last few credits need to look like, if they're nearing the end, obviously it's easier to help for planning and preparation. We have a little worksheet that we send to parents and say, here's what your high school career could look like with some example courses, and then kind of a blank worksheet that says, oh, here's what we want to take, and now we can help introduce things like that computer science credit. So we go through the same process for somebody that's trying to transition to say, let's look at you are and see what credits are left. And of course, those that are on target with whatever grade level they're in, transition is, of course, a little bit easier. But if we find that there was some struggle due to circumstances in the school or just academic struggles that maybe things have gotten a little bit behind, we look at what it would take credit hour wise to kind of complete that through the course of their school career. And then we have that conversation with the parent and the student to say, well, this is what it's going to look like for you to finish your last 2 years or your last 3 years. You'll need this many credit hours per year. And sometimes you see the big eyes of that's a lot of work. And that's when we say, well, this is why a 5 year high school program may be an option for you. So we try to build a little bit of confidence in that the whole idea of a 4 year high school, we shouldn't look down on that. The circumstances allow, for a little bit of extra time. And so we encourage that when it's necessary. And if the credit hours are just too high, we offer that as a 5 year plan. And there are many, many homeschool families and other umbrella programs that help encourage families to just spread that out one more year, just to relieve a little bit of that pressure from the student. So we want to see success, and that's the goal there.
So for a 5-year high school, I know there's a lot of students, especially in homeschool, that finish early. You've seen these super genius that oh, they graduated high school at 14, or oh, they graduated high school at 15 or 16, and they're going to college already. And there's all this like praise for these kids who like get done quicker. And so these children who might have these learning disabilities or might need to take a little bit longer, there's a lot of pressure to perform there, and for the parents to talk about that with their students, because I think there's also a lot of pressure from parents to be like, no, you need to be done in 4 years, and we've got to get this and we've got to get that. And like, this is how it has to be. And the student just might be struggling. Maybe there's some undiagnosed ADHD, or maybe, they have dyslexia, or they haven't figured that out. The parents haven't figured that out. Maybe it's, very slight or minimal. Um, Sometimes, we as parents maybe don't see things that we need to see, especially in our students. But is there a way, or is there some kind of assessment or something that you help the students go through, or even just talk about with parents for this specific thing? Because I feel like, it's not talked about a lot, 5-year high school career, which I'm like, oh yeah, why not? Like, why not? And that would leave for more gap room to learn, and to grow. And if somebody's not ready, like, why force them?
Yeah, you picked a great word because there's that idea of the gap year, and that's even if you whenever you finish the high school program, you've graduated. This idea of just pausing for a moment and making sure, because there's this idea, especially for those graduating early, this idea of entering school, picking a what the things that you're going to study, picking lifelong decisions or making lifelong decisions, especially when you're much younger, uh, not always do they turn out so well. So we try to encourage this idea of slow down a little bit. A lot of times the parents are also uh, feeling like they're failing their student when they aren't able to launch from home, at 17, 18 years old and start living on their own. So we just try to build that confidence that that's not necessarily the case. And, these, formative years of making lifelong decisions about what you're going to study, what you're going to get your college level degree in and things of that nature. So we just it's more of a conversational interview process that we try to do when students are trying to transition during those high school years, and just get a feel for, well, what is it that your goals are, and try to help them meet those goals, and temper the standard lines of thinking a little bit, and encourage them to slow down just a little bit and analyze what choices they're making.
Right. Especially if somebody has dealt with like traumatic experiences with bullying or anything of those matter, where it's, definitely interfering with their mental state or their emotional state, that does take some time for them to be
Hmm.
able to overcome. And I don't think we talk about that. We have the most depressed and the most anxietous youth of any generation. And why is that? We've got social media that they're seeing. We've got all these catastrophes all over the world that are available at the click of a button. And a lot of times, that can impact your academic skill, that can impact your ability to focus, your ability to learn and intake information, especially new information that's, maybe extra strenuous. So as parents, we need to be mindful of that element that, yes, they might take a little bit longer, but is it really that challenging? Is it really that, in the long scheme of things, is it really that big of a deal that they maybe take a little bit longer? If they've dealt with the bullying or they've dealt with the emotional or physical issues, that takes some time. That's like altering life changes that happen, and we have to account for that. Maybe they need some more time at a therapist's office, and there is nothing wrong with therapy, right? We've got this whole stigma over mental health, which has gotten a little bit better over the years. Not that I think everybody needs to be in therapy, but I think, for a lot of it, like, I think these younger students could benefit from something, especially if they're going through a major bullying issue. And if your students, unsure of themselves or whatever, you have to take that into consideration when you're thinking about their academics and how they're able to actually retain information.
Yeah, so you bring up another good point in that, you mentioned that a lot of times the issues are dealt with or dealing with the issue means making a transition, to an at-home model or some other type of supportive model of education. But when there's, especially for those, I would reach out to, speaking to the parents that maybe are dealing with some traumatic issues. We have this idea of brushing a lot of things, as you point, under the rug, but helping a student face the things that they're struggling with, in a real life model. Life doesn't quit. When you're an adult, you still have to go to work, you still have to do these things.
Hmm.
But right now, that pressure isn't there. And so helping a student transition through a traumatic experience to say, you know what, we're going to dial back the education part so that we can have that
Feel,
supportive therapy time or
yeah.
whatever. We're going to reduce the credit load. We're not going to make it go away because that's not real life, but this is a model that allows for that. So if you are
Hmm.
dealing with something, this is a great model for that transition. So you can say, you know what? Yes, we're dealing with something that's terrible, but we still have to do our schoolwork. We still have to do some day-to-day things. But as a parent, it allows you to lighten the load so that they can see, that transition of, yeah, I have to deal with stuff, but then I also have to get stuff done.
Hmm.
So that's what, it makes for a great model.
Yeah. And on top of that, we always are like, okay, well, summer should be off. Like we need to have a break for summer and there shouldn't be any school over summer. And while that's great, we have a lot of homeschoolers that actually do year-long school and they take like 6 weeks on and then 2 weeks off or 1 week off. And that model actually works really well, which would then allow you to have less academic load and more balance between academics and just living life, learning how to live life, life skills, practical life skills, and then doing more academics in the summer. So, if this is an issue, um, do you all have your program available in the summer?
So, yes, our online program in particular that we offer is available year round. So we started at the beginning of the standard school year around the August timeframe. We let the family decide when that start date is. That's not hard. We have our school start date pretty standard at the beginning of August, that first or so week of August. But if a family says our start is the beginning of September, that's fine. We simply start that, and then we let the time that the online program is available go year round. And so the structure, they tell us what they want that structure to be, and our online program does the automated lesson planning and distributes that load across for the student to basically keep them on pace throughout the year. So yeah, it would definitely support the cycles that you talk about, the year round, or if we want to end by May so that our summers are off, we can support that as well.
Right. So it's very flexible, which is what's great about homeschooling in general. Um, and that really brings us to, okay, so there's nothing wrong with the 5-year high school career. What if the student comes in and they're, missing all these credits and it's like, okay, they're inching closer to that graduation date and they still need to get done by a certain date because maybe they have some other outstanding circumstances that have to get done or what have you. We've talked about the GED being an option. A lot of people frown upon the GED. That used to be one of the only options for homeschoolers way back when. They didn't have the ability to do credits or other things. They just had to opt for the GED because there was no recognition. So it's still an option. Can you share a little bit about like where you would say, okay, this is why we would go and do this versus not?
So yeah, if a student comes in and they're pressed against a time, those are a little bit case by case, but the goal is success. And
Right.
what we find a lot of times is the students that feel under the gun also aren't really performing well. So they're just trying to rush to get things done, and it's not really a success model. So there are times when we simply have to tell a family we can't help you because either the history of the credits and the scores and the grades that you have prior don't really indicate a success model. And so we're not able to support that. But when they are, and we've had an example in recent years where a high school senior just needed 2 credits because of a pretty disastrous bullying scenario at school. Sure, we were able to support that, help the student get enrolled and try to get those last couple of credits knocked out. And so we can compress the timeline, and our system will help guide them and keep them on task if they have a specific timeline that they need to do that. That's we're talking about the online program. Of course, if you're homeschooling and in that particular case and you're managing all of that, then again, we still take it on a case by case basis. It's a little more difficult for us to manage that when it's completely happening at home. But again, we need to talk with each of the parents as that comes up. But we certainly work in every aspect that we can to support success model for the student.
Right. Because ideally, yes, the academics is important, but for the student to learn how to manage life, how to manage, job and home time, and just learning all the different skills to be able to take care of themselves, like that is the bigger learning process. That is like the majority of what we're trying to do here is not just, okay, let's get these academics done, let's make sure we get good grades and like graduate. It's okay, how are we managing ourselves when we're having to do things that we don't want to do? Are we able to have some self-control, or are we going out and, wasting time
Mhm.
procrastinating and all of that? And so this is really a great way for them to take some ownership on their own academics, but also that the parents are still involved. And like we said, there are plenty of places where you can learn and have a study for the GED, and it is not a bad option. I've seen it talked down upon or frowned upon on so many occasions. It's like, well, it doesn't have it's not as good as a high school diploma, or it's not as good as finishing all these credits and getting all these, GPA scores or whatever. Um, I don't see it as such because you're still having to show competency. And a lot of
Yeah.
times they are still accepted at, upper level educational facilities, right?
Yeah. So yeah, and I did fail to touch on that earlier, but yeah. So when the student finds themselves in that critical mass scenario and finishing credits doesn't seem terribly likely, then we do suggest that they consider the GED route. By and large, if your goal is to enter the workforce, it's going to say high school diploma or GED. And by and large, they're not going to look at any details. And if you're able to successfully complete a GED exam, that's what they're looking for. Do you have the basics of reading, writing, math, et cetera? Um, and then when it comes to college entrance, they rely on those standardized tests frequently. Most of the time, the ACT will be involved and things like that. So if a student is transitioning from a GED at some point looking to enter college, there will be some other testing probably required with the SAT or the ACT for most colleges to then accept them and enroll them. So, it's going to be a lot of times when they enter in that GED model, after a few years of time, when they're actually been through that workforce a little bit and they realize, okay, I'm ready to now own my education process, then they can start that and then become successful in the college level years, just because it's now their decision as opposed to their parents kind of pushing them through it.
Right, right. And I'm glad that you mentioned that there's other tests other than just the GED because yes, SAT, ACT, and also there's college placement tests at the college level.
Hmm?
I know at the community college level, you can collect out of classes if you're above, or you just take a placement entrance test. And that can even bypass like ACT, SAT, which is sometimes more strenuous. I believe there's still costs or requirements for that, but it's definitely something to look into if your student just wants to get an associate's degree, or they're like, I don't really know what I want to do. I'm just going to go for general ed and get some kind of upper level, college certificate or degree just to have. And that's perfectly fine. There's so many entrepreneurs that are out here without anything, they dropped out of high school and they're still making it. So,
Yeah, and it becomes like you point out earlier, it comes out the life skill process, right? The motivation, sticking to something, having that desire to move forward on your own and making it part of what you want to do. That is teaching that helps the students to become successful in all aspects of life.
exactly. So I know we touched a little bit on the computer science and transitioning with high school. For the parents who are like, okay, I really just like I've got all the class stuff figured out. I really just need help with maybe the diploma and the credits, then
Mhm.
what would you can still help them, right? If they're like, yeah, we've got all the classes taken care of, but now it's like, okay, I just have to do this paperwork and I need help with that.
Right. So part of that's part of what enrolling in an umbrella provides for you. So we help manage that. And I mentioned the worksheet earlier in our discussion where you're planned out what it is that your student is going to take. And so as those credits get accumulated, we're building the transcript and then we're also building the actual diploma. So by and large, the parent is not on the hook for a ton of paperwork. That's our job. And so we help produce that. And as long as we are in communication with the parent, they're staying on task, and we're on target for graduation as is, then we produce that diploma. And being enrolled in a Tennessee private school, they are issued a private school diploma in that case. So if they
Okay.
are choosing to homeschool on their own and they're registered directly with their county and things like that, then it is a parent diploma, and they would have to do all that paperwork that you just described. And so we try to help. That's the what the purpose of an umbrella is that, or by and large, is to do the heavy lifting and take care of the paperwork side of things and help the family just get through the actual education part and support them. One other thing I wanted to bring up real quick is a lot of families, as they enter high school, realize, um, yeah, I don't really remember much of math, and or I'm not really keen on teaching my child physics or chemistry. I didn't really do that great when I went through it. And so a lot of times, what we would encourage is to find local co-ops and tutorials. And I think we spoke about that during our last episode just briefly, but so we encourage parents to say you don't have to actually teach it all. And so while yes, we do have an online program where the bulk of that stuff is there, if you're not interested in the online part of education, it's fairly easy nowadays to find a co-op or a tutorial where a particular subject your child can go and will be able to sit in an actual classroom style environment in your local area, and the instruction will happen from a lot of times a certified teacher or even somebody that teaches at the college level that's interested in participating kind of in the homeschool world. So there are options that we can help parents that are interested in homeschooling through high school where they still manage the bulk of it, but if they're stuck on a particular subject, we don't want that to scare them away. We can provide some solutions and help them find those in their local areas.
Yeah, absolutely. That you just made me think of something, especially in the Tennessee area. I think it's coming nationwide, but they are offering now where you can actually do college courses at co-ops. And this is a new thing that's happening where the moms, if they have or show proficiency at college level and they're able to take care of the syllabus, that they can actually do the class for the students at the co-op. I can't remember what it's called. I think it's Kingdom Halls or something like that. I have to get the details on this. But it's very exciting because that means, if you do want a student um, that is, maybe dual enrollment, then they can do that while at the co-op instead of having to go to the college campus. And these are from Ivy League schools, mind you. So there would be a faculty member that would be overseeing it. And then the syllabus is given to the parents, and there's a communication between the parents and the faculty from like Harvard, we're thinking Yale, we're thinking Princeton, like all these big Ivy League schools and other, Tennessee, Wesleyan, all of these other ones. They're working on that right now, which is really, really exciting because a big issue that we've seen, and this is going off topic a little bit, but bullying and like being on a college campus with much older individuals and having that age gap can sometimes, you don't really want your student to be on the campus just yet, but they are ready for that type of um, knowledge base. So super, super fun things that are coming for homeschoolers.
Yes, that's actually new news to me. I wasn't aware that that particular piece was happening. But the students that we work with that want to dual enroll, we can help support that as well. And so part of that, when they're entering the 11th grade uh, and they want to start thinking about dual enrollment, we encourage the ACT or SAT test because a lot of schools will require that
Yes.
as part of the entrance for dual enrollment. Um, so, yes, we have some students that are participating in that as well.
And that they can do with the online program, or is this even just like if they're just with your umbrella school, do they have to be signed up for the online program or is it for both?
Yeah, for either one, for us. So yeah, by and large, the ones that our students are involved in are the online courses that are available. The 6, 8, 12-week courses that the dual enrollment offers through the colleges. And so those are online. And so yes, uh, to answer your question, in both cases. So if they're just using us for an umbrella, they can sign up with those with their ACT or SAT test scores. And or through using our online program, we would just switch one of the credits to the actual dual enrollment credit with the school.
Which is great. I did dual enrollment for 11th and 12th grade, and I felt so smart because I was taking one class and it counted for two classes. And I'm like, I am living life. This is genius.
I am a genius, yes, right? Why wouldn't you do that? And it's
Yeah, yeah.
but not to discourage others. There's a bit of work when you're taking a dual
Oh, it
enrollment
is
course. It is
way more
college
work.
level. There's a lot of writing and reading and extra work is involved. And so, uh, you know, if you are, a very studious person and that is up your alley, that is exactly what we recommend. But it's not for everyone. So we
It
don't
is
want to
not.
discourage families. You're not dual enrolling. You're not
You know,
doing the thing.
you can
That's
actually
that's
hinder. You can hinder yourself. Students can actually hinder themselves if they try to
correct.
take dual enrollment classes and then fail those classes. Those are then on your record. So please make sure that you
That
are
is
capable and ready to handle that work. Um, it is a
good.
great place to be because then you're getting free credits essentially, that you don't then have to
Mhm.
pay for on your own later on because they do pay for it here in the state. But or at least part of it. Most of it is paid for. I know there's some kind of discount with it, but from what I've been told, you can hurt your GPA if you do take classes and you then fail those classes, they stay on your GPA, which can then, hurt for getting scholarships like the Hope Scholarship and other scholarships that are here in Tennessee. So you want to be very, very mindful about what you do with those credits.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the point, right? So you make sure you're ready because it is a college credit and it is part of the credit GPA that you will end up with for your
Mhm.
college career. And so yeah, just make sure you're ready. And we look at that with the families to make sure that what was done before and the level of study and involvement in the courses prior match what's going to be coming up and to encourage them the right way, one way or the other. It's maybe not the
Yes.
best model for you, or this is a good model based on your work ethic and what you've demonstrated thus far.
Absolutely. So, if anyone wants to find out where you are, where can they find you?
Certainly. You can reach us easily at our website at axisacademy.org, O-R-G, and that's A-X-I-S academy.org. And we can find us at Axis Academy also on Facebook as well. And you can reach us by telephone if you're in the greater Knoxville area or anywhere at 865-269-7500.
Wonderful. And we will make sure we have that information down in the show notes as well. If you want to email them, we will have that as well. Thanks so much for coming on again, Todd. It's always a pleasure chatting.
Thanks so much. It's been great.
Absolutely. Happy homeschooling, everyone. We'll see you next time.